Thank you for tuning in to this Business and Arts webinar focusing on sponsorship during the pandemic. This webinar was originally presented as part of Business and Arts artsvest program to over 50 arts organizations and is now available to the public as part of our commitment to provide up-to-date resources and keep the arts sector informed. Jennifer Shah is the Director of Sponsorship Marketing at Hot Docs in Toronto, an organization she has been with for the past 18 years. Jen is responsible for all areas of sponsorship marketing, activation, and private sector development. In this webinar, Jen will guide us through the decision-making process that Hot Docs went through as the pandemic became a reality in Canada, and how they have managed relationships with sponsors, partners, and donors during this age of COVID-19. Jen also answers questions from the ArtsVest participants.
The way I have structured this presentation, I've tried to make it just, this whole situation is still unfolding. So what I've tried to do is give a little bit of perspective on how Hot Docs has managed this situation, starting all the way back with SARS back in 2013, 2003. And I was with Hot Docs at that time. So just to kind of let you know our thought process going into this pandemic and when we started thinking and planning for it, and how some of our lessons from 2003 impacted our decision making today. And then I'm going to talk about all of the different things that we've done to really change how we deliver our services and our business. I think in order to talk about sponsors and partners and donors and how to service those people and keep those relationships up, the key to all of that is making sure that you still have something on offer, as difficult as it may be in these times. So I think what you'll see is that we are dealing with the same thing that every other arts organization is dealing with right now. But I do think that that we've had some really interesting and creative responses to how we're managing some of these situations. And at the end, I'm certainly happy to hear certain scenarios from different organizations and maybe offer some suggestions or thoughts on how you might be able to continue offering services during these times. I do want to try and keep this positive. It's a really difficult time, and that's putting it mildly for everyone. Financially, obviously, being isolated, all of it is far from ideal. But I do really try to see the light at the end of the tunnel and try to figure out how what we're doing now will impact the future. And so I hope to also bring a little bit of hope to this session today. So I've titled this Anatomy of a Pandemic and a Film Festival, but it could really be titled Anatomy of a Pandemic and Any Not-for-Profit. Hot Docs is in the position right now of being one of the larger arts organizations in the country. When I started with Hot Docs, we were tiny. We had about 5,000 audience members, a really small staff, and I've been at the festival for 18 years. So during that time, we've really exploded. So at last year's festival, we had almost 250,000 audience members. So that kind of just gives you the scale of where we were back in 2003 or 2002 versus where we're at now. But back then when SARS hit Toronto, it's so interesting. We all really started thinking about what that time was like for Hot Docs. And we thought that probably some of those scenarios could recreate during COVID. We all remembered the global spotlight that was on Toronto as the epicenter of the outbreak. A bunch of us remembered watching CNN and seeing a person in a mask walking down abandoned and deserted streets. And that actually wasn't really what the case was here, but that's certainly what the media was portraying it as. So at that time, the SARS pandemic happened around the same time as COVID. And so we saw a huge drop in international travel. So alongside of our 10-day film festival, we also run a full industry conference and market. And so, a good chunk of the filmmaking industry for documentary happens during Hot Docs. That's where things are bought and sold and pitched and screened. And so seeing that huge drop in our international markets was pretty devastating financially, but also to the structure of that event. Interestingly, though, our public screenings were largely unaffected. So when COVID hit, our thinking was it'll probably be the same. We'll probably have to modify what we do with the industry conference, but probably our public screenings will be fine. And how wrong we were with that. But very early on, that's what we were thinking. So back in April of 2003, the internet was very nascent. It's not at all, there was no Zoom. There was very little in the way of teleconferencing. So we were able to create some interesting workarounds for our pitch forum. So we were able to Skype in buyers from around the world. They listened to the pitches that were happening live here in Toronto. And we were able to salvage some of the event. So, through some quick thinking and some, some magic with the tech that we had available, the forum was able to happen that year, albeit in a very different way. And it was still very financially devastating for us to not have all of those pass holders coming to the conference. So that year was kind of a big year for Hot Docs. We realized that we were kind of at the level now that something like a global pandemic or a recession or anything that cannot be planned for is something that could basically wipe us out. And to the credit of Chris McDonald, our executive director at the time, and Brett Hendry, who was our managing director at the time and is now our current executive director, and our board of directors, they made a very firm decision in 2003 that Hot Docs needed to create and work towards an accumulated surplus fund. And that every year we needed to have some of our budget contributed to what we were calling a rainy day fund. Just in case something like this ever happened again, we would have a financial cushion. And I have to tell you that, over the years, the accumulated surplus has been something that, staff talk about, saying like, we've got this money in the bag, why aren't we spending it on programming? We've got this money in the bag, why can't we, do these 5 other things that we could just spend the money on? And our management team and our board were adamant that no, the accumulated surplus is there to save this organization if something ever happens. And let me tell you that living through this pandemic and seeing all of the years of building up that surplus and kind of the sacrifices that we had to make, are we ever grateful that we did that now? That's something that I think could be a whole other webinar, in fact, is just financial planning for not-for-profits and planning for things that can't be planned for. And that's certainly a huge lesson professionally that I've learned during these days. So Hot Docs does have a little bit of a financial cushion. It's still, we're very lucky because we do have that. And if we didn't, it would be dire. But it certainly doesn't mean we're out of the woods. It means we can keep the doors open for a little bit longer than we would have normally. And so all of the innovations that we've come up with over the past 2 months have really been with an eye to making sure that the organization stays alive and thrives, and that we don't have to shut our doors. I think that's probably a sentiment that that everybody on this call here today has in mind as well. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our senior management team and our thinking around the COVID-19 situation. It was interesting. A team of my staff were in Japan in December running another event that we do called the World Congress of Science and Factual Producers. And so when we came home from Japan, a few weeks later, we started hearing about this outbreak in China. And we had a number of colleagues who were at our event from China. And we do a lot of work with a couple of doc festivals in Guangzhou and a couple of other provinces. So we were all paying very close attention. We also have a couple of our colleagues who have family in China. And so people that we know were being affected very early on in this pandemic on the other side of the world. I should also mention that our executive director's wife is a public health doctor. So I don't know to what extent that helped us, but I think, having our executive director with someone who has a very strong knowledge in the public health sector probably helped us start to plan for this stuff earlier on, I think. So I will say in early February 2020, we all started discussing the fact that this virus looked pretty bad, and that it seemed to be spreading. We started to see it spread into Italy, and that was obviously a very awful situation. Hot Docs has international delegations of filmmakers that come to the festival, and Italy has one of our biggest delegations. So we started hearing from those filmmakers who were personally affected or had families who were being personally affected. And I think for all of us, we started to realize that, wow, this thing is actually pretty real. This isn't something that's just happening on the news. This is something that's affecting our colleagues and our friends around the world. Brett decided that we should probably take a look at how we were set up for working from home if it came to that. I don't think any of us actually thought we would have to be working from home. But all of our department heads went back to our teams. We wanted to make sure that staff were set up. Did they have computers at home? Did they have reliable internet? Did they have cell phone service that allowed them to make calls? All of that sort of thing. And, you know, some of our staff didn't have a good setup at home. Many people had really old or unreliable computers. Many people had, you know, very low level internet access. A lot of people didn't have mobile plans that would allow them to use their phone for work purposes without it costing a ton of money. So we spent some time making sure that that infrastructure was in place so that if we did have to work from home for any length of time, we would still be able to keep ourselves up and running. And so I think that was some early thinking that I certainly know from other colleagues at other not-for-profits, not everybody had the foresight to do that. And I think that that's, you know, it's just something that happens. You know, our organization happened to have the SARS experience. We happen to have, you know, some insights into the international goings on of this virus because of our friends and colleagues. And so we're also really prudent. So, you know, we're a pretty financially conservative organization and generally quite conservative in how we run the not-for-profit. So I think this was just another one of our due diligence checks that we were doing just to make sure that we had done it, but not because we actually thought that we would have to action any of this. And then, of course, in early March, we did have to action it. So on March the 11th, and I remember this vividly, when the World Health Organization had finally declared COVID-19 a pandemic, I remember emailing my boss. My husband works in healthcare and is on the front lines. He works in a number of nursing homes that have had outbreaks, and one of them today, he found out, just had another spike in an outbreak. And so I was hearing all of this stuff from his side of it, and I quickly emailed my boss and said, are we going to be starting work from home? Because this sounds like it's a pretty bad situation. And we did. So we decided that we were going to start working from home, and there were a whole lot of bugs for the first 2 weeks in how that worked out, just as I'm sure everybody else has been experiencing. And then we decided that we really need to have to go to our board of directors to talk about the possibility of postponing the festival. And for us, this was a huge decision. This is what we do. We work towards this event all year long. And you know, there's so much love and blood and sweat and tears that go into putting on the festival, that the idea of having to postpone it was just, there were a lot of tears. It was heartbreaking. And at that point, we didn't know that we would have been mandated to postpone anyway. This was before there was a ban on large gatherings. But we decided, just because we have so many people coming from around the world and because we have so many people coming into theaters, that it really was the best decision for the health of our audiences and for our communities. So we had several board calls. We worked through a whole bunch of financial modeling decisions and different scenarios to figure out how we were going to survive this. And then ultimately the board voted, the board did vote to postpone the festival. And then subsequently we had to close down our cinema. And that also happened a couple of days before we would have been mandated to anyway. So I thought it would be interesting for you guys to hear how we managed, you know, so here we are, we have to postpone our festival. We have $1 million worth of funders attached to this live event. And if they all pulled out, our organization would go under. So we had a lot of conversations about the best way to communicate this information to our sponsors and partners. And I think a lot of these lessons were learned from how we operate on a year-round basis anyway. We always make a strong effort to make sure that our sponsors and our partners have information in their inboxes before we go public with it. So if we ever send out a press release, our partners have already been told about what's happening. So they feel like they're in the communication loop and part of the family before they're reading about it online or seeing it on the news. So we send out an email correspondence to our festival sponsors and partners before our press release. And at this stage, this is what we were telling people. And I'll just read it out because it's so funny for me to read this because it's so different from where we're at now and it's not been that long. We basically just said that, we've been preparing to mitigate the impact of COVID on 2020's festival. We talked a little bit about how we successfully did our public screenings in the midst of SARS. We were super optimistic that we had all the lessons that we could learn from that. And obviously that we've been forced in light of public health guidance to postpone the festival. So for me, the key point was, as a valuable partner, I wanted to let them know that our board was meeting to make this decision so that it wasn't something we were taking lightly. And that our course of action would be to postpone our public screenings to a later date in 2020, and that we would replace our live industry programs and pitches into an online environment. Letting them know that the press release was going out, but that, we're letting them know first. And we also talked a little bit about how we have our own venue. And we've, because we have our own venue, we have experience producing digital content. And we think that course for the industry conference will be a good way for us to move forward. We also let everybody know that we would be in touch in the coming days to discuss their individual sponsorships and to figure out how we might be able to reconfigure those. At this stage, we had decided to move the industry conference and market online, and I'll talk about that more in a few minutes, but making that decision quickly really helped us salvage a lot of our sponsorships that were connected to the industry side of the festival. And I'll dig in deeper a little bit on that because I think there's some interesting things there for other organizations to learn from. So on March 16th, we officially closed the offices. Everybody was working from home, as I'm sure all of you are doing as well. We began with our daily Zoom meetings. So our senior management team met daily every morning on Zoom, just because there was so much coming at us so quickly that we had to work fast to make things happen and just to make sure that we were thinking through every scenario. Oh, I should mention I have 3 dogs, and you're going to hear from them now. We now have scaled that down to 2 Zoom meetings a week with our senior management team because we're all super busy now rolling out these other initiatives. And then our individual teams meet 3 times a week, and we do one-on-one calls when needed, but we're very much in communication very regularly. And I think I was really worried about how I would respond to working from home. For my entire career, I've always gone to an office. I've always had set office hours. And so it was a hard transition for me to figure all of that out. But I will say now that I've gotten into my groove, I actually feel more productive working from home. So that's a good outcome, I think, for me in all of this. And then I think as managers, all of my colleagues and I were really worried about keeping our full-time staff up to date and connected, keeping morale up. It's really scary when, you see all of this happening and you're not sure if you're going to have a job tomorrow. We made sure that we let everyone know about the HR resources that were available to them. Hot Docs has an employee assistance program that is offered through our benefits package. So making sure that people had the support that they needed emotionally and mentally so that they could continue, being okay to work from home and helping us reposition the festival. Excuse me, I wanted to talk a little bit about the impact of postponing the festival and closing the cinema. I think a lot of this is not going to be earth-shattering. It's what you would expect, and it's what I think a lot of people are dealing with. But I think by reinforcing that this is how it impacted us, you'll get to see that it's kind of universal. And the phrase "we're all in this together" is getting so overused, but in this case, I think it really truly is the case. For us, it was devastating for us to have to look at our staffing. We hire a lot of seasonal contract staff who come on for 3 to 6 months to help us get the festival ready to launch. And we had to make the really difficult call right away, knowing that we weren't doing the festival in the normal way, to lay off our seasonal contract staff. And then we also had to lay off all of our non-management cinema employees, which was, again, devastating, really difficult for all of us. Hot Docs has uh, a really strong and vibrant culture for employees. It's very rare that somebody would, would get laid off or fired from our organization. It's just not something that really happens. And so I think for all of us, from the top all the way down to our colleagues, on the front lines at the cinema, it was just brutal. Some of our staff started crowdfunding campaigns to help the cinema staff, and we did see a lot of warmth and vibrancy and leadership come out of a ton of our different colleagues and staff. And so that was really nice to see. And it was just great to see everybody pulling together like that. So with all of the decision making that we've had to make, the thing that we realized is that in order to keep our partners, sponsors, donors, audiences, and our industry engaged with us, we would have to figure out an entirely new way of delivering our services. And if we didn't, we would have nothing to offer any of those people, and that would be detrimental to the organization. So I'm going to talk about the 3 different business lines at Hot Docs. We've got our Hot Docs industry, we've got the Hot Docs Festival, and we've got the Hot Docs Cinema. And I'm going to go through and show a few examples of how we've been able to, and I swore that I wouldn't use the word pivot, but that's what I'm going to say, because we did. We had to pivot everything online, and we had to be creative, and we had to think fast. And so this is what we did. And I can also tell you that it's still rolling out. So I can tell you how things are going now, and then maybe we can check in 2 months to see how everything landed. So Hot Docs industry decided really quickly that we felt pretty confident that we could move the conference and the market online. A few years ago, we built a streaming platform for ourselves that we called the Doc Shop. And at our festival every year, we host a library of documentary films that are in the festival, and we have it available for online streaming so that buyers and broadcasters and festival programmers can access the titles without having to go to the cinema, because they're usually really busy with meetings, but they still want to be at the festival to pick up films. And this is a really great and easy way to use technology to make that easier for them. So because we had the streaming platform built, we felt that we could take that platform and kind of add to it. And we had meetings with, the company is called Cinesend. That's who we're working with, and they work with a lot of movie theaters and festivals around the world, but they're based in Toronto, and we have a really good relationship with them. So we decided that, we put a plan together. We spent about a week and a half figuring out what we could do and what the technology would allow us to do. And so we decided that, first of all, we would have to figure out a discounted rate. So at this point, a lot of people had purchased passes to attend the conference in the pitch market. We obviously couldn't continue to charge them $1,200 for an event that was going to be significantly different. No networking, no cocktails, no food, no parties. That's what a lot of the pass fee covers. So we came up with a price of $200, which we thought was accessible for people, affordable, and still reflected the amount of work that we had to put in to make this conference happen online. And so we did, almost all of it was done on Zoom, and it's astonishing to me what you can do with Zoom. It's astonishing to me that our organization was able to, it was all hands on deck. A bunch of the people on my sponsorship team ended up producing digital sessions. My colleague Lawrence is like a master Zoom tech now. Like he could start his own spin-off business producing conferences, because he's gained so much knowledge from this process of having to just jump in and learn. And so that's been really exciting and cool to see. Some of the content that we offered on Zoom, some of it was pre-recorded. So we did a lot of work pre-recording sessions, and that included a keynote with the filmmaker of our opening night film. We pre-recorded a number of conference sessions that had a moderator, several people on the panel taking part. We did a panel that explored filmmaking in the age of COVID that we pre-recorded with a number of established filmmakers. this is a big sponsorship one, was micro meetings. So we offer opportunities during the industry conference for our industry sponsors to host meetings with delegates about who they are, what they do, how they work with filmmakers, what their mandates are, all of those sorts of things. So I wanted to make that a priority, that we were able to offer that to our broadcast partners and industry organizations. And it turned out to be, some of the sessions that had the highest viewership. So again, we produced it almost like a television show. We prepped everybody. We figured out the time that we would shoot the meeting. We shot everything digitally. And then what we did with all of this pre-recorded content is that we sent it to an editor so that we could make it professional and make sure that the quality was really up there. And so all of that content was shot and then edited, and then we uploaded it onto our DocShop platform, and people could watch it on demand. We're keeping this content up until the end of May, so that pass holders have full access to that, and they don't have to binge watch everything. And then we also did a series of live sessions and hangouts, and this was what we were calling the big experiment. So if you've ever seen the show Shark Tank or The Dragon's Den, our Hot Docs Forum is the documentary film financing version of that. So we normally are at Hart House on the U of T campus in a beautiful old room. We've got a table with 20 or 30 buyers around it. We have 800 people in the room who are industry people watching the pitches and learning about the industry from that. And so we decided that we were going to do this all pre-recorded. However, the pitches would be live. So we had 22 film projects, and for every film project, we had between 20 and 30 buyers on the Zoom link in real time, responding to the pitches, helping to, help to finance films, asking questions. So the actual experience for the filmmakers and the buyers was live. But what we did was we recorded those sessions, we did editing, we put in film clips and all of those different things. And then we made it available at the end of our conference week last week for all pass holders to watch. So it was a little bit of a hybrid, like, let's do this live so that we can get the live experience for the audiences and for the filmmakers. And then we were able to capture it so that all of our other industry stakeholders would still have access and be able to watch. And so this all happened last week, and I have to say that I'm still blown away that we essentially recreated the most important documentary film financing event in an online environment with very little time to do it, and the experiment worked to our great relief. There were a few glitches here and there. It didn't go 100% perfectly, but the end product was fantastic, and it did go very, very well. And our industry folks were thrilled that they were thrilled that we tried, first of all, and secondly, very pleased that it worked and they got the information that they needed. The other thing we wanted to do, a big part of most of these kind of industry events, is networking. And we do a happy hour at the end of each day. We build in a lot of different opportunities for people to meet and greet and get to know each other. So we wanted to figure out a way to do that. And so we thought, well, we'll use Zoom. We'll limit it to 25 people per session. And we scheduled them. So twice a day, last week, Monday through Friday, we had Zoom Hangouts where people from all over the world could join. We had a moderator. I moderated some. Our programming team and industry teams moderated some. And I have to tell you that like the love that the delegates had for each other in this online setting was so amazing. The sense of community was incredible. New people got to meet each other. We've had stories of people who met in a Zoom Hangout who've gone off to, do their own face-to-face calls. And we really were able to recreate that sense of community. And I think in the months ahead of us, I think we're going to try really hard to figure out how to keep that going and how to make that kind of a key part of what we're offering to the industry during these times. The other interesting thing is that we normally do about 900 one-on-one pitch sessions that our industry team curates. So people apply with their pitch, they take a look at the project, and we were able to schedule, this is happening over a month, not a week, but over the next month, we will be hosting 900 one-on-one curated pitch meetings that are happening online. And this allows, I will say, it's the generosity of the decision makers who are doing this from home and are very open to it. But it's a really important business opportunity for filmmakers. And it's important to note that a lot of our sponsors are these people who are taking the pitches, and this is really helping them to continue being able to do business when they can't travel. And so, you know, everything that we did around the industry conference, it has really helped us keep the industry moving forward, albeit at a slower pace, but it's keeping everyone connected and people are still able to do business at this time. Again, all of this stuff will be on the platform until the end of May, so we're not rushing anybody to you know, watch everything all at once. The other thing that is on our doc shop is the full or mostly full list of 2020 festival titles that would have screened at the festival. So anybody with an industry pass for that $200, they also have access to watching almost 200 films over the course of the month as well. The learnings I think from this is that this doc shop platform did work very well for us, and it's definitely something that we're going to have to look at continuing to share information about filmmaking during COVID, sharing professional development and creative content with our stakeholders. And we also see several sponsorship opportunities around this. I actually sold a sponsorship yesterday for somebody who wanted to host a session, panel session, and have it live on our doc shop platform. So it was really exciting that I actually was able to send out a contract and sign a partner up during a time when I thought that was probably going to be a really tough thing to do. And it is, definitely is tough, but it was, again, a little light at the end of the tunnel that maybe there are some opportunities out there that we can explore and work with partners on. I thought I would just quickly show you guys just the landing page for the doc shop, just so you can see what it looks like. So we had a carousel here up at the top, really easy interface. People could watch. All of the pitches had their own carousel, and so people could go in and watch them. And then also, here's an example of how the content was laid out. So this top one here is films from our World Showcase program. People can go through and watch them directly. And again, here's our Hot Docs forum. So we've got everything categorized and cataloged in a really user-friendly way so that it's easy for people to find the stuff that they're looking for. So now I'm going to talk about the Hot Docs Festival, which was supposed to happen at the end of April, first week of May. So normally at this time of year, I would have the day off and I would be relaxing and planning my summer vacation. And instead, I'm actually busier than I normally am because we are really working around the clock to figure out how do we keep the festival happening and how do we move it to an online platform. What the first step that we did when we knew that we were going to have to postpone the festival, we knew it was really important to figure out how to keep our audiences and our partners engaged with us. So we came up with the idea of something we were calling Hot Docs at Home. And this started out with us curating lists of past festival titles that were widely available on all the different streaming sites. So we started off with staff picks, and then we started digging into our programs. So the Big Ideas series is presented by Scotia Wealth Management. So we put together the best of big ideas, and we're able to give Scotia some profile on that Hot Docs at Home. We did the same thing with our Persister program, which Oxfam generously sponsors. And so we really took sort of all of these catalog titles, curated them, put descriptions, did a quick link on where you could find the content. And I have to say that the feedback from our audiences was amazing. People were really happy to have all of that discoverability done for them. And so a lot of people, you know, got to see titles that they'd missed at past festivals. And so it was a really great way for us to remind people that, you know, the festival isn't happening right now, but here's some titles that you maybe missed. Here's where you can go and see them. And so that worked out really well for us. And then the Hot Docs at Home brand has actually become the brand that we're putting all of our new online offerings under. We were also able to partner on a Hot Docs at Home initiative with CBC Docs. So CBC Docs is a signature partner of the festival. They had 7 feature documentaries that were going to world premiere at our festival. But they, first of all, CBC has no Olympics, they have no sports, so they have a whole bunch of slots to fill in their program lineup. And knowing that they had these 7 feature documentaries, in their inventory, they wanted to do something quickly with them. So we worked with them to co-brand a new broadcast slot called Hot Docs at Home on CBC. And so every Thursday for the next 7 weeks, I think we're in week 4 now, we do a world premiere of one of the films that would have screened at Hot Docs. It's co-branded with us. It airs first on the CBC main network, then it airs an hour later on the Doc channel, and then it lives on CBC Gem in a Hot Docs at Home folder that's really easy to find. I'm actually not doing a plug for it, but the content is fantastic. So if you're looking for some great, interesting docs, that's a really great place to go, and everything is free. And then we were also trying to figure out how do we leverage Hot Docs in this deal outside of just a brand placement partnership. And so our director of programming has been pre-recording Q&As with the directors of these films. Often there'll be subjects involved. And this bonus content lives on the CBC website and also on the Hot Docs website, and we promote it through social media. So people are really getting a festival experience. They can watch the film either on TV or on CBC Gem, and then they can go and hear the Q&A and kind of behind the scenes and digging a little bit deeper into the content. And so that's worked out really well for us. I just did a little screen cap here from our website under the Hot Docs at Home category. And so under that, we've got what's streaming. So you'll hear more about some of the first run content we're streaming through our digital cinema when we get to the cinema part of this. Our Hot Docs at Home collection picks, Hot Docs at Home on CBC, and then Curious Minds at Home, which I'll talk about because it's a cinema initiative. And also our Docs for Schools program is now happening all online as well. So I'm not going to talk too much about that, but it's just another one of our programs that we were able to take and package, and instead of doing it live, figuring out how to do it well online with some interactivity. So 2 weeks ago, we made the decision to actually proceed with a digital festival. Our goal was obviously to have a live event and to show the films at least once to a live setting, but nobody knows when that's going to be able to happen. If we are able to open in the fall, and that's a big question mark, we'll probably be at a really limited capacity in cinemas. And so we thought, at a certain point, it's not going to become viable for us to do this in a live setting. And so we made the decision to go digital. Prior to making that decision, though, our programming team did a ton of outreach to, South by Southwest and Copenhagen Docs and Tribeca and any number of other festivals that had done some online work. That really helped us collect best practices to figure out what has worked for them and what hasn't worked for online events. And then key for us was content. We wanted to make sure that we had a good, robust collection of films that we could show to audiences. We didn't want to have 10 films like South by Southwest had on Amazon. For us, in order to do it right, we had to make sure that the catalog was there and that there was a really good representation of films. And so what we learned from that is that digital rights holders don't love the idea of screening their films online. So we had to be creative with that too. So in our negotiations, we decided that this wouldn't be content that would be available for all of Canada or all of the world, but we would geo-block for Ontario. And so that way, if films wanted to go out after they streamed with us, they would be able to do that. And still have audiences out there in other parts of the world that would still want to see the films. So to date, we're thrilled to say that we have over 140 titles that confirmed last week. And today we issued our latest e-bulletin. We have 5 new feature films and a whole bunch of shorts that have confirmed. So we will be doing the digital festival beginning on May the 28th. So audiences will buy digital screening vouchers to access their films over an 11-day window. This still blows me away that our tech team worked with Roku and Apple TV to build apps so that you can stream directly on your smart TV as well as your device. It's literally watching Netflix or Crave. And so that's been pretty amazing. We're also going to be recording an introduction for every film. So our programmers, our executive director, and a number of other people are taking turns kind of hosting the beginnings of the films. We wanted it to really have that personalized festival experience. We wanted to make sure that we could do our land acknowledgements. We wanted to be able to thank our sponsors and our funders. And then we will also be doing a very limited digital pre-show. So some of our partners have trailers that are a part of their sponsorship packages, and there's a pretty high value on that. And so, you know, if not being able to offer that would have been a really big blow to us, because that's where a lot of value comes to our sponsors. So we'll be doing an intro, we'll be doing a limited trailer package, and then it will go right into the film. And then at the end of the film, we're going to edit the Q&As that are being done this week and next week onto the ends of the film. So our goal is to have, you know, a huge number of Q&As, just like the festival experience. And so the team is working again around the clock, getting all of that content captured so that we can be ready to launch on the 28th. Another cool thing that I thought I would mention is that we're still doing all of our film prizes. So we put together film juries during the festival to award, you know, Best Canadian Feature, Best Overall Film in the Festival, all of those different things. We're still doing all of those prizes, so filmmakers will still get those honors. The big prize at Hot Docs is a $50,000 award for the best Canadian film, as voted on by our audiences, and that's sponsored by Rogers. At the beginning of this, we thought probably they're not going to want to give that money out, even if we did pivot to a digital platform. To our great surprise, they actually wanted to continue to support the industry, and they are still giving away the $50,000 prize, but we thought it was probably more appropriate to split it up a little bit, just because times are really tough right now, and it's better to, we think, share the wealth with a range of filmmakers. So our top 5 films, as voted on by audiences, will each get a $10,000 prize, and we feel really grateful and really pleased that we can continue to support filmmakers with that. And then we'll also be doing our awards ceremony online. So that's going to be a live event where, you know, we're just like at our regular event, the filmmakers will still have the opportunity to be honored and to receive their awards, albeit online. So that's the festival. I'm almost done, I promise. I'll stop talking and let you ask questions. So the Hot Docs Cinema, Hot Docs runs one of the only documentary-focused cinemas in the world here in downtown Toronto. And again, we had to decide, we had to make the call to close the cinema, and then basically it was mandated. So we were really worried about, you know, what would happen to the cinema if we, you know, if we had to close for any amount of time. At first we thought it would be 2 weeks, then maybe a month, and now it's just kind of an open-ended question mark on when we'll be able to get back into the building. So the team decided to try a digital cinema and to see how that would work. And we've done this with a few different programs. So we have this amazing program called Curious Minds, and Curious Minds is a later life learning series that discusses any number of interesting subjects. We sell out. There's usually about 700 people in our cinema, a lot of retired folks who've got some time and who are engaged and interested in a range of subjects. And so we thought that could be a really cool thing to try doing online. So we pre-recorded and streamed these lectures that happen over 6 weeks. Every Monday, a new episode of the lecture will drop on the website. And then each series of lectures will have a live Q&A near the end of the course, so that participants will still have an opportunity to talk to the lecturer and ask personal questions. And we're offering 4 different subjects on this right now. So I've just put in a little screen cap to give you a sense. So, you know, one is a course on meals that changed the world. One is a course on the royal family, you know, and a number of other subjects. And so one of the interesting learnings from this is that now that we're able to offer this program online, we're not just limited to the GTA. And over the weekend, our sponsor of this series is the broadcaster Hollywood Suite, and they're in a free preview right now. So viewership has gone up 700% for Hollywood Suite, and they decided that they would run an ad for us, a 30-second ad on their network. And it started this weekend, and all of a sudden we started getting all of these subscriptions for people across the country who wanted to take part in Curious Minds. And we brought in quite a lot of revenue over the weekend because of this. And for us, now that we've done this, we think this is such an amazing opportunity for us going forward to be able to offer these programs to people across the country and start to build our brand outside of just Toronto and Ontario. So that's been a really positive thing to come out of this for us. And then we've also been playing around with first run films. So again, not all digital rights holders are interested in doing first run films online. But I think as we kind of settle in for the long haul of this pandemic, they're realizing that they may have to. It may be the way that they're able to get eyeballs on the work and make some money. So we've got a number of distributors who are working with us to offer first run titles to stream to our digital audiences. And we're going into our third week of this, and we're adding new films every week. And it's been really amazing to see the audience numbers are steadily growing and people are open to paying for new films. Here's The Booksellers is streaming until May 22nd. This is not a movie. Beyond Moving. So all brand new films that people are really excited to watch. From a sponsorship perspective, this actually down the road will allow us to build in some sponsorships around screening programs and potentially screening trailers before these films. We wanted to play around first to see what the numbers were like, because it's really hard to pitch a sponsorship if you don't know what the impact is going to be. But we're really cautiously optimistic. People are picking up on the format and they seem to be really interested. And so, yeah, so we're going to continue with that. So I'm almost done. This is sort of my last point. And I actually really feel like this part could be its own webinar, potentially with, 2 or 3 other organizations kind of chiming in to give everyone some best practices and scenarios of what works and what hasn't really worked so well. I'd love to be a part of that with, performance arts organizations and music and art organizations, and really kind of coming together to have some institutional knowledge from across the cultural sectors to help all of you. But I will quickly talk about how we've managed our relationships with our sponsors, our partners, and with our donors. I think right off the bat, clear communication from the beginning. So we kept everybody up to date before we issued statements publicly. If we got emails asking us questions, we responded quickly and concisely. And my next point, honestly, I want everyone to know that when we were talking to our sponsors, we did not candy coat anything. We wanted them to understand that this is a dire situation for our organization. If we're not able to sell passes and sell tickets to screenings and fulfill sponsorships through all of these different initiatives, essentially we would risk going under. And it really, this does have the capacity to cripple any organization, as a lot of people are feeling. So we really wanted our partners to understand that, and we really messaged to them that if we were going to survive this, we needed their continued support. And their continued support would ensure that Hot Docs would be around for years to come. Honestly, if our key partners walked away from us, we probably would have had to shut our doors already. And luckily that hasn't happened. We're thrilled that all of our main partners have stuck with us. Not everybody was able to, obviously. We've had some partners who are just struggling to keep their doors open. A number of retail partners who we worked with have not been able to fulfill their partnership with us this year. We've had some advertisers, Tourism PEI, for example, was going to launch a big campaign with us. Obviously, there's no tourism happening anytime soon. So when those situations came to us, we were obviously, we tried our best to keep as many partnerships as possible, but there definitely were some that just weren't going to be possible. And we tried to be as understanding about that as possible with those partners. And also just thinking down the road, thinking down to next year's festival, we're still keeping those partners who weren't able to be part of this year's festival. We're still keeping them on our radar. We're keeping them engaged with when the festival goes digital. We're going to give them some complimentary vouchers to screen films. We really want to make sure that we're keeping those relationships alive, so that when all of this comes to pass, we'll hopefully be able to partner with them again and still have a good relationship there. I can't emphasize enough how much creative thinking is so important right now. For us, no idea was off the table at all. And I was saying earlier when we were doing the setup for this meeting, I was just saying that, sometimes the sponsorship team or the partnership team is the thorn in the side of the artistic director or the programmers or the communications team, who kind of just think the logos are annoying and having to fulfill all of these things. Or it's just kind of a pain in the butt. What I'm seeing now is that my colleagues, who are generally quite good anyway, but I think even more so now, realize that if we can't service our sponsors and our partners and our donors, we don't have a job and we don't have a paycheck. So creative thinking has won the day with us at Hot Docs, and nothing has been off the table. Things that I would have suggested 2 months ago that I would have been laughed out of the room are things that we're doing now. We have to leverage our digital tools like social media and our website way more than we've ever had to in the past. And so our teams are being as flexible as we can, as creative as we can, and figuring out opportunities to feature our partners in ways that we maybe wouldn't have in the past. I will say this meant that we had long phone calls with every single partner to find out what they needed in these trying times. As much as businesses are struggling, many of them also have needs so they can stay connected to their clients and to the people that are buying their products. So, knowing that has really helped us develop a number of different programs that we're doing customized for different partners, so that they can have a service through Hot Docs that is helping them keep their client base happy. Quick decision making is another big one, and it's really hard to make quick decisions in the middle of a pandemic where you don't know what's happening in the world, never mind in your organization. But we all just jumped in with both feet to try new things quickly. Launching the festival, we made that decision like really quick. We were a little bit slower deciding to do a digital festival, but the reason for that was because we didn't know if we had the content. Everything that we're doing, we call the big experiment, because we don't know what will work. We don't know what's going to resonate with audiences in our industry. But we've acted quickly. We've made very smart decisions. If something looks like it's not working, we chalk it up to experience, jump in and try the next new thing. But I will say most of the things that we've tried have been quite successful and well received. And, if not perfect, we're able to modify the offering a little bit to make it even better. And I think this is something that all of us tend to forget, but is often one of the most powerful resources that we have, and that is leveraging our networks. So through all of this, all of our different teams kept in touch with, we weren't all talking to all of the same people, but, we were engaged with our board, with our advisory, with our partners, with sponsors and filmmakers, with our donors, with other key advisors, with our audiences. We made sure that we kept these people in the loop, that we asked for their advice, that we asked them what they wanted from us in this time. And honestly, having this group of fans and people who love what we're doing, to hear and see them wanting us to succeed has been probably the motivating factor for all of our teams in all of this. These people have come up with some of the ideas that have worked so well for us. They're the people who will give us critical feedback if certain things aren't working, like on a technical perspective, if they're streaming a film and there's something annoying, they jump in and let us know and we can fix that really, really quickly. But I think this group of people in your networks, they can help you with insights, they can give you new ideas, and they can really keep you motivated. And so I really encourage all of you to try and keep those conversations happening and keep those people who are invested in the work that you're doing on side, so that they can help you and help all of us through all of this. Okay, so that's me done talking, and I've covered a lot. And I think some of it was detailed, you know, and it's very hot dog specific, but my goal was really to show you how our organization from the beginning through to now and continuing has been able to figure out new ways of working and new ways of creating opportunities and revenue streams. And I'm very aware, one of the things I love about Business for the Arts and being an ArtsVest mentor is hearing from and helping some of the smaller organizations out there. And, you know, I think it's often the smaller arts organizations that are creating so much uniqueness in the arts communities, and they add so much to our communities in general. So anything that I can do to help you guys answer some of these difficult questions, I'm always happy to do. And I am up on the mentoring portal as a mentor. So there's probably a few of you here that I still need to respond to, and I will do that. We've just been really, really slammed. So ArtsVest team, if you want to open it up to a Q&A if we have time, it's now over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jen. That was, I mean, it's fascinating what you've done. You know, the level of detail and professionalism and that's gone into this very compact time period for you to do what you've done is just amazing. So we do have some questions. So if you still have the time to stick with us.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. It's very funny. I was seeing the questions flash, but I just ignored them, but I can actually go through them from the top to the bottom. So what portion of your budget is in your surplus fund? Our organization is slowly building one to cover 6 months of operational expenses. We are only able to use self-generated funding for this, not grants or sponsorships. Yeah, so I think with us, we had a benchmark of a 10% surplus total. For us, it would be 3 months operating. And over the years, we've actually been able to get more than that in the pot, which is great. I would just say that for every organization, it's going to be different. Some years are going to be harder and leaner than other years, but I think as long as you're keeping it as a priority with your board and if you have a finance committee or a treasurer, just making sure that that's something you're thinking about. And I think, as I said, this is one of the biggest lessons I've learned is just how beneficial it was to have that. The next question, you mentioned discounting the conference fees. What was the discount and how did you arrive at the amount? Very good question. It was not scientific at all. We kind of just talked as a team to figure out what we thought people could afford. Having never done an online version of our industry conference, we weren't confident we were going to pull it off perfectly. And so we had started at $500, and then our director of industry really just said, like, I think it should be $200. I think it's an entry point that people can afford. We'll deliver some good stuff, but if it's not perfect, people won't, you know, they won't be too mad about it, because remembering we also have access to a ton of films for people to watch as well. That's first run content. And that number did really well for us. We had over 1,200 people register for the conference. And for us, we were hoping to get 400 or 500. So it worked really, really well for us. Did you encounter any hacking issues using the Zoom platform? We've heard so many stories about unexpected guests turning up and disrupting presentations. How secure did you find the platform? We've actually loved using Zoom, and Isaac is our tech director, and he was speaking with people at Zoom directly. Pretty quickly after these hacking incidents started, from my understanding, Zoom started putting patches in place. I know I use Zoom constantly all day long, and almost daily I'm getting a notification to update for security. And so we've had no instances of hacking at all. And in fact, we found it to be a really robust tool to use. We have a joke now, half of my sponsorship team are Zoom camera operators. They literally, like, our department could actually start our own business doing Zoom conferences, because we jumped in to help with that and learned just so much in a really short amount of time. So we had no problems with the platform. The amount of people that we're able to bring on, you know, right now we've got a capacity for 1,000 people for a Q&A, for example, but we can also buy extra access. So for us, it's nice because we can purchase the amount of users that we think we'll acquire, but we can also scale up if we need to. And I think most importantly, it's been really user-friendly. So, I did a Q&A with a filmmaker in New York last week, and he's an older guy. He's like early 70s, very hip, amazing filmmaker, very, up with the times. But walking him through how to use Zoom was probably like the funniest thing I've ever done. But we got him there, and it was because it was so user friendly. So I think that's another great part of the tool. And we're paying Zoom, like they're not a sponsor, so I'm not doing a shout out for them just because it actually has been incredible, an incredible tool for us to use. What are some of the Zoom or other tech learnings that you can share? We are also looking at how we can create gatherings online. You know what, I actually think that that's probably something that Hot Docs could contribute to the arts community is kind of best practices around how we use this platform to create our online networking events. And I would say, Rhonda, if you want to send me an email about this, I'd be happy to walk you through it and kind of explain in more detail how we've created those gatherings online. And I think my email is on the Hot Docs website, so you can just go there and you can figure out how to reach me, and we can talk about that a little bit in more detail. Also, did you hire contractors to make the pivot to online possible? What would you recommend for an organization with limited experience? So we did a lot of it in-house. We have a tech director and a tech manager who run a lot of the stuff at our cinema. So we were lucky in that we've been using Zoom to do filmmaker Q&As at our cinema for many years, like at least 2 years. So those two are pretty amazing, and then they worked to train our teams. We did hire Cinesend, and so they're a company here in Toronto. They do post-production, but they've also started doing digital cinemas and other online offerings. And so Cinesend had built our DocShop platform a couple of years ago, and so and they actually are a sponsor of the festival as well. On the industry side, nothing to do with this. So we know them quite well. And we had one of our industry managers take on the project of working with Cinesend to build out all of the elements for the industry conference. He didn't have a whole lot of background in that before. He is an expert now. So I think finding those tech people is key. I certainly would recommend Cinesend. I think they're an amazing company. And I think, at that point we had limited experience as well. So again, if you've got any specifics, that was Mary Elizabeth Archer. If you've got any really specific questions, feel free to send me an email. More than happy to chat with you about your specific situation. I really appreciate the Zoom Hangouts. What did you do to create the sense of community? This is a really good question because we were really worried that these were going to fall flat, and we just thought, like, we'll try them, and if they fall flat, then we know that they don't work. I think the key to them was that we had a moderator on every session. So some of them we invited international industry people, so from other film festivals or from other organizations that would be a draw for people to take part. And we made sure that these are people who are good at networking, they're good at conversation starting. And then we had some staff. So I did a whole bunch of them. And basically, I just came up with a bunch of kind of key things to talk about if the conversation didn't happen organically. I think a key thing was going around the Zoom room and having everyone introduce themselves quickly, who they are, what they're working on, what part of the industry they're from. And so from there, I would take notes as the moderator, and we also had a lot of filmmakers who had films on the festival, so made notes of that as well. And then that way, as I was moderating, I was able to jump in. There was a filmmaker from Italy, so I was able to jump in to say, what was it like, in the heart of the crisis in Italy, and how did you respond? And had a great conversation about how he was actually volunteering at a hospital during that time. So some very cool conversations came out of it. And I think moderation is key, and just making sure that you're trying to engage all of the participants so that they don't feel shy. Can I expand on working within the filming restrictions and geo-blocking? So I don't do this personally. This is what our programming team works on. But I will say that for us, we had a lot of really high profile film titles that, will go on. They're like HBO titles and Showtime and some other big distributors with titles. And for us, it just became really clear that if we wanted to show these films across Canada, it wasn't going to be possible. A lot of rights holders were not really interested in doing that experiment right now. And we thought if we could test the waters with sort of a smaller region. So for us, Ontario is who we generally reach with our live screenings. So people will come from Toronto and GTA, but also other parts of Ontario to come and see films. And so we thought if we can make it a smaller section of the country that we're geo-blocking and creating access for, then maybe it would encourage distributors to try it, because a lot of them really just didn't want to try it. So, and we're really lucky. So, we've got a lot of people who are now participating. I think the fact that we're keeping our prizes happening, so the film prizes and some of the cash prizes are still there, so that's a bit of an incentive as well. But yeah, I think the geo-blocking was an interesting learning for us because it seemed to help us get more films to participate in the online festival. Have I found a single platform that will allow us to stream a film and then have a live Q&A? So we use Zoom for that. And again, technically, I don't do all of this stuff. It's Isaac and JP and Lawrence from my team who do that. But Mitzi, if you want to send me an email, I'm happy to connect you to the folks on our team who are doing that. And we did a sneak peek screening a couple of weeks before the festival was supposed to happen, where we did do a screening of a film and then a live Q&A, and it worked out really well. So Mitzi, if you want to send me a note, please do, and I'll be able to connect you to the people that can fully answer kind of the tech side of that question. Can you speak to digital rights? What permissions, licenses do you need to stream? Oh, hang on. To music and videos correctly. I'm not an expert in this area, so I can't really answer fully. I can say that for Hot Docs, the films that we show, we are not rights holders. So we require the rights holders to say, yes, you can show this film, whether that's at our festival or whether that's at a digital cinema. So we had to negotiate contracts with all of the rights holders in order for us to do that. With your Curious Minds, was this done using Zoom or was it another platform? So Curious Minds is a little bit different because it's a lecturer. So often we'll have, if we're doing a film intro or it's a person doing a lecture, we'll have them film themselves and then they send us the footage. We edit the footage so that we can have an intro with our film curator. So with the Curious Minds offering, because it's a lecture series, we're not using Zoom for that. But when we do the live Q&A near the end of all of the Curious Minds courses, that will be facilitated through Zoom, and we'll send that information out to everybody who is registered for the series. Next question. With respect to having a surplus, how does one ask for continued cash support if they have emergency funds in the bank? So I don't know if I fully understand the question. So if you've got funds in the bank as an accumulated surplus, it's actually viewed as, a good management practice. So if the question is, if you're asking for sponsorship and you have an accumulated surplus, it hasn't affected us. If the question is more around having a surplus in these times and asking for emergency funds, I think, for us, this is what's paying our paychecks right now, and it's going to run out. And so, I think it hasn't hindered us at all having that in place. I think our sponsors certainly see it as good business practice, and many of our key sponsors are also on our board. What are some of the unique properties that you have offered your sponsors on the digital side? So for a lot of our sponsors, we're looking at connecting them to screening programs that will happen during our digital festival. So that means that they will have a lot of website profile. We're doing banner ads to connect people. We're doing social media campaigns to help generate and drive interest to our different partners. And we have been able to continue with screening some of their trailers. And then down the road, some of the things that we're working with our partners on are creating customized curated screening lists, potentially working with filmmakers to do private screenings for different groups of our constituents. So Scotia Wealth Management, for example, may want to do a private screening, digital screening for a group of their customers. So we're working with them to help negotiate those different rights as well. And we're also working with one of our partners to white label our doc shop so that they can use our platform for their own conference needs. So those are some of the interesting things I think that have come out of it. And as we continue to figure out new content for the cinema going forward, we're keeping a lot of our different partners in mind. So an example of that would be we generally partner with Bell Let's Talk to do Bell Let's Talk mental health series in January over Let's Talk month. We're going to be partnering with them in July to create a second Bell Let's Talk series, just talking about mental health and isolation and kind of all of the different things that people are dealing with right now. What licenses are required to put things on through our website? So any other online broadcasting requirements? Shelley, I don't really know. I don't deal with music at all. And any content that we put on our website is all rights holders. So whether it's the filmmaker or the producer or the distributor or whoever owns that film, we can't do anything unless we have a signed contract with them and they have said, you're allowed to do this. So I would say that's very specific to film. With music, I'm not sure. Again, I think your best bet is to go to the rights holder and say, this is what I want to do. How would you suggest I move forward with that? Oh, thank you for the heart, Mary Elizabeth. That's very sweet. I think I got through everyone's questions. Is that true?
You did it. That was
okay,
amazing.
good.
Yes. Thank you, Jen.